All right, should be live already. Should be
Yeah,
live,
it says the broadcast is live.
guys. I'm gonna check my YouTube whether it's live because there will be 5 minutes. Is it 5 minutes? 5 minutes or less delays between the stream if you're watching on YouTube. So I'm gonna share around first. It's already shared. Okay, but then in the same time, this broadcast will also be uh, recorded and then saved on YouTube, so others can watch as well. So okay, now we need to go back to our main topic. Now, hello everyone. So this is Chising from FUG KL, and welcome everybody to this Saturday morning to join us, where Keith, Shaza here from Keith as well from Carousel, Singapore, and Shaza from Stampede, it's a UX design agency. So what we are going to talk about today will be how managers like Keith and Shaza manage their remote design team, since during this COVID crisis, a lot of companies, or literally every company, needs to actually go online or remote. So happens is that they might need to change their working style and management style in terms of how they actually manage their own remote design team. So let's start off with, like, of course, introducing each of our panelists here. It's like what's their role and stuff like that. So I'll actually push my question to Keith. So Keith, let's see, like, what's your role in Carousel and what's your responsibility as head of product design?
Yeah. Hi everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Keith, head of product design at Carousel. So, what's my role in the company? So I have a team. I have a team of designers who actually, like, because we're divided into squads. So I have a team of designers who kind of look after the different product areas. So I think my key role in this whole setup is to make sure that we all design with empathy, and to make sure that the solutions that we roll out is not only usable but also useful for our users.
All right, sure. We move on to Shaza. What Shaza does in Stampede as a UX
What
principal.
do I do in
Yeah,
Stampede?
yeah.
Do we have all day for this?
Oh no.
No. Okay. I'm gonna brief you real quickly. So I founded Stampede a few years ago,
Mhm,
and currently I serve as the CEO and also the UX principal.
mhm,
Um, Stampede has been remote since we started. And I myself started as a self-taught web designer.
mhm.
I am a designer's designer. I enjoy the design process immensely, and I have done my due in terms of being a designer. But now I am slowly learning how to be a better leader, and I believe in strong technical skills because probably, like, I believe in, I don't know, like, lots of people probably don't believe in the 10,000 hours potential that you unlock, but I do. And so I wear two hats in Stampede. The first hat is as a designer. I help other teams design products that people want to use, and this is because Stampede is an agency. So we actually help businesses like Petronas, CIMB, Touch and Go, to grow their UX maturity and also have better design capabilities. But at the same time, because I'm also a designer, I am a maker. I am always looking for new ways of running design process. So I love the design process, but I keep wondering, is there a better way for us to execute?
All right,
So that's
all right.
yeah, so that's my designer hat. Then there's also the CEO hat,
Mhm.
in which I run the business of design at Stampede. So I need to drive a balance in our design culture because we are a company of makers. And my job is also to grow and sustain the business in fair weather and in a storm like right now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, all right. Right, cool, cool. Now that we know that what their roles is and also what they do in their own respective companies, so we want to move on to the next question, which is actually about a little bit about COVID-19 as well. So how has life changed since the outbreak of COVID-19 to you guys personally and working remotely as well? So of course, firstly, I would actually ask Keith as well, how has life changed for you personally and also in terms of working remotely?
Yeah, so I guess the world it's all staying at home right now. So the biggest change is for me, it's definitely staying at home versus going to office. Even as an introvert, I like to be alone most of the time so that I can be kind of thinking in thinking mode. So you would think that I would love this period of time, right? And then, but to be honest, it's very hard. Like personally, I realize I miss those water cooler conversations at home. No, sorry, at work, where you kind of just randomly bump into people and then you kind of talk about how's the day, or just talk about something that happened in the meeting like half an hour ago, and the interactions at work, right? So as designers, we are very physical, not in the sense that we beat each other up, but more like we enjoy being in the same room, kind of drawing things, putting up on the wall, and then just looking at things. And the analog way is a lot more tangible and faster for us to design, to think. So really miss those interactions, and even like random kind of just going out to lunch with your colleagues, or those are the little interactions that I realized that I've missed.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that is the biggest thing I have to deal with personally, lah. Like actually, I'm not so introverted, as I thought I was.
All right. Okay. Sure. So, how about you, Shaza? Since Stampy has been always a remote working company, so how has life changed since COVID-19 came?
Okay. Personal life changed a lot.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, and the reason that happens is because actually up until the MCO in Malaysia, I was traveling a lot.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and I was usually only home 5 days a month. It was really, really awful. So I travel a lot because even though we're remote, we have client engagements. And now I finally have some time to be at home for much longer period of time. I'm sorry, Keith. I actually love my time at home right now. And I feel like I love spending time working amongst the things I love. I have more time to think. I think that is very important. I'm able to sleep early, wake up early.
Oh, okay.
If Yeah, and it feels like a deep inhale. It's like a time when you inhale very deeply and don't know lah how long we're gonna inhale because we don't know when the lockdown is gonna end. But similar to Keith, I also miss seeing my team. I miss seeing my parents because they live in another state, so I couldn't visit them. But yeah, I do miss having like working on a design sprint at the same location with my team. Yeah.
So the physical interaction is actually quite nostalgic in this time.
It's true.
Nostalgic is
Although maybe we spend half of the time arguing, but yeah, you kind of miss that.
all right. Okay. Sure. So now that we actually talk about most of how people feel in Malaysia and Singapore as well, or in the entire world. So cool. Now, so for a third one, it'd be a little bit different. It's much more in terms of work one. So how much of a difference in your team's workflow in comparison to our physical workflow on site and also remotely as well? So how is it different right now? So I think this question I'll move to Shaza first. So Shaza, how is it different?
So we have been remote for 15 years actually.
All right.
And when we started, it was completely selfish of me. I live on the island of Langkawi, and I wanted to continue living on the island of Langkawi, and therefore that's why I came across the idea of going remote because that solves a lot of problem for me. I don't have to go anywhere, but because of that, we have to also hire remotely. Some of our clients have actually been with us for as long as we have been around, and they are also with us remotely. Our early clients were from the US, from Europe. So what happened was remote working gives us the luxury to work from anywhere, but also to counter Keith's point just now, I felt like we work just as hard and we're more efficient because we have the ability to focus, and we have all the extra time that we don't need to spend on commuting. So it's actually quite amazing when, especially if you're in Malaysia, you know, if you're in KL and then you're looking at 1 hour commute each way, so that's a total of 2 hours gone every day. Looking at everybody else's red taillight. So and so far it has been, I would say that this has been a long dry run for us, and then suddenly the COVID-19 happened, and suddenly it's like showtime. The day before the lockdown and the day after the lockdown at Stampede, it's business as usual, but we did notice several changes. We did notice that clients were having really hard time transitioning to remote working. And some of our engagements had to be on hold because they were not sure whether it's possible to actually run design sprint remotely, whether it's actually possible to run a workshop remotely. So initially we thought that, okay, you know what, we just take this probably 2-3 months off from doing all design process. But then our clients, as you can see, week 1 they were in shock, probably in denial. Week 2 there was a little bit more acceptance. Week 3, bargaining started happening. And ultimately they were asking, hey, you know what, if we are already this comfortable with working remotely, can we actually run things online? So that's what we have been doing. But in terms of Stampede itself, the way that we do work, nothing much changed. But what we suddenly discovering a need in is actually in the necessity of innovating better ways of running our design process. So previously, some of the things that we do were mostly like for design. Some of them are online, some of them needs to be on site. But then we have to be very careful. We want to make sure that our employees are safe. We want to make sure that our clients are safe. But at the same time, we need to sustain our business. So even though if the lockdown has been lifted from Malaysia, I think we will continue working remotely. And our clients, what I know, also they are planning to stay working remotely for the next few months. So that's going to be the new normal for us. But so we're preparing for that now.
Okay. All right. So Keith, how has working remotely changed, and between working remotely and working on site for Carousel?
Yeah, so I think prior to, so we call it circuit breaker here. Prior to the circuit breaker, it's already normal for us to kind of have a few colleagues, working from home, because the aircon guy is coming.
Okay.
They're waiting for some delivery. So it's perfectly normal for us. I think the biggest, definitely, but this is like everyone is working from home, right? So that is the difference. I think previously we do not have a lot of empathy when let's say we are in a group meeting, and then someone is calling in, and then we will kind of just jump up to the whiteboard, start drawing something. I have no empathy for the guy who is like calling in, like, hey, I cannot see your whiteboard.
Okay.
Yeah, but now that everyone is having the same kind of work from home arrangement, so then we are a lot more mindful that we need to be kind of in meetings, we need to be clearer. We need to be kind of take things a bit slower. So if you want to show something, you draw it, you take a picture, you send it to the group chat. So it's a lot more productive, and I think you can involve a lot more people as a result. So for us, we started. So even prior to the circuit breaker, like Carousel has been doing this kind of alternate work arrangement. So like Team A will work from office, Team B will work from home, and then we switch every week until the circuit breaker. So and then everyone started working from home. So I think because of we had that rehearsal, so we also kind of after the rehearsal, the alternate week arrangement, we did like a retro, like, hey, like how is it working for everyone? So really using our own design process on ourselves, right? So we ask ourselves, like, what's one word that we can describe our experience for the past few weeks, and then think about what we like. There's some things that we like about working from home, and then what we kind of lack, and then what we long for. So we kind of went through that process and think about some of the things that we would do to make work from home a bit more easier, to go through. So some people love it, some people hated it. So yeah, everyone is different.
Okay. So I would also like to add on a question for you, Keith, right? So because you mentioned that before the circuit breaker has been announced, Carousel is actually much more on the test run period for remote working. So before the test run period, is Carousel very actively in terms of remote working, or is just kind of partial where someone's like you mentioned, the aircon guy is coming, then I need to stay at home, something like that.
Um, yeah, I mean, we don't have like a quota, like, or you can only work from home like 2 days a month. Like there's no such thing. So our work arrangement is very flexible. So like, be it like the aircon guy is coming, I'm waiting for delivery, or even like some people might just say that like Thursday it's like my work from home day in the week. Because we also have people who will block out meetings, right? Like say like there's no meeting Thursdays, or like no meeting Wednesdays, and for them to concentrate on the to be heads down and concentrate on delivering the work. So because we accommodate a variety of different working preferences, I would say that yeah, like it has always been just kind of we manage ourselves.
Okay. Cool. So in terms of working, right, how has communication changed for you guys? So like because right now before circuit breaker or before the COVID, interactions are physical, much more audible. Right now everything is going through the internet. So how is it? How has it changed in terms of communication? So I would say give a try first.
Communication. I think generally we have moved from a lot of face-to-face meetings to more asynchronous communication. So like instead of like say, hey, let's meet at 3 p.m. to talk about this, you'll be like, hey, I've written something, or I've sketched out something. Here's the link. Let me know what you think. And then people will leave their comments. And after that, the designer will just come back and reply to those comments. Sometimes sometimes we also, what we do is we schedule like, hey, all like 3 p.m. let's all go into this Figma file and leave comments. And then you get very rapid to and fro quite quickly. And I think because the whole idea that the comments are all on the document, right? Someone else can come in later and add to the discussion. So I think definitely what I see the biggest difference is that face-to-face communication, like shifting to more asynchronous. So that's why I think what I see is that we're using Figma a lot more. We're using Google Docs a lot more.
So before that, why is it why is it lesser? Because it's transferred through like verbally. It's like I don't like this or blah blah.
Yeah, I think before that we always felt like it's a lot easier to get alignment, to kind of get a richer discussion going when we meet face to face in the same place. We can understand each other better. Like, you can just point at things instead of like having to like write down what you mean. So I think like when you're face to face, you can afford to be a bit more careless in your communication, right? Because you're in the same space. There's common grounding here. But then when you're doing asynchronous, you do have to write a bit more. You write more than what you will say, so that you can communicate your comments across clearly. Yeah, so I think it forces us to be clearer in our communication as a result.
All right. So in terms of communication, right, what are the must-do things that you want your designers to do during like maybe design discussion and stuff like that? Must-do things, like interesting things that happen that you need to have. Okay, we need to do this in terms of remote working.
I think we let's rewind back to the pre-COVID-19 days, right? When the designers share like this is a work in progress. A lot of times what we will ask is like, what's the context? Why are we doing this? What user problem are you solving? I think this is the same if we have a tendency to skip those context building part in our presentation, it will also carry on to the online documentation as well, right? So when the designers are sharing their design, I think what we do is to encourage them to always share context. So now Figma is not just a place where we put our designs. It's not just a place to look at screens, right? So the designers are also writing a bit more. explaining like why, like what are they doing, like what problems are they solving, so that when people go in to look at the design, they have a lot more context to base their comments on.
Okay. All right. That's nice. That's nice to hear. So, for of course, Shaza. So, how has communication changed, or is there any difference at all?
I second what Keith said. Actually, there is a lot of the success behind the reason behind success in presenting design is actually about context building. And obviously, when we go remote, a lot of context, we tend to be consumed by our own knowledge bias. We think people know what we know, and therefore we forget to actually scale that RAM that we create for our audience. So at Stampede, actually, we have been practicing something that is very very important in a remote team, and that is writing skill. Every design that comes from Stampede will come with a design rationale. And I noticed that this is actually one of the hardest skill to master. It is also quite the shock to any designers who join our design team. But the moment you are able to actually communicate the rationale behind your design, you already win your audience. A lot of times when you send in any screens, you yourself have done self-check whether your design actually solve a problem or not. So you actually eliminate the need for the other party to ask you what problem I'm solving, exactly like what Keith mentioned just now. So this design rationale is basically describing the goal of the screen, what the user is supposed to do, and what is the ensuing action from this screen to the next. How does this particular screen complete the entire flow, and how does this screen contribute to the impact of whatever design goal you're trying to achieve. So writing communication have always been something that we practice, but it is even more important now because we don't have the luxury of presenting designs to client anymore. We actually have to send them written notes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so we do this in Figma now. But also, I think that what I do notice is even though the communication doesn't change, we have always been heavy duty communicators. But I do notice it gets a little bit more structured since everybody gets to work remotely. Um, I give you two examples. I noticed that in Zoom calls, the moment our people start a video conference, they start by giving context and goal, and this like is instant. It is like very natural for them to start with context and goal, so that everybody have the same shared understanding, common ground, and have a clear view of the goal that we're trying to achieve at the end of the call. So I noticed that. And the second thing I noticed was every time after we run a workshop, a very high stake online engagement, like a workshop, a design sprint, people immediately regroup after each session to find out what can be improved. And again, this happens automatically. So they themselves develop this structure and they themselves feel like we're gonna do this for much longer. This whole remote thing, might as well we do it better every time. Might as well we iterate so that it becomes better every single time. So that's how it has changed. Yeah.
So in terms of like you said, writing is much more structured and much more detailed in a way for Stampede. Is it the same thing from your clients as well? Are they writing much more structurally, or are they trying to call you to communicate their feedback and stuff like that?
I think because every design that we do comes with the rationale, it is very rare that they actually, usually the questions that we get from them are, that's interesting. I understand the goal. Do you think if we add this, it can add value to that goal? It those kind of conversations now. It is not about
Okay.
move this button here.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, because those things have already been considered and have been weighted by the designer themselves. So I think, so I don't know if they are writing deeper, but I think it opens up conversations with clients that actually creates more value instead of like the old way where people, you send design to client comes back with a list of revisions, you fix it, you send it back. Yeah, that doesn't really happen anymore.
All right, that's good to know. good to know. So I think in terms of communication, we already covered that, and then of course design in the end will be transferred into development and also interface. So how is handling developer handoffs different right now, and also I think brainstorming remotely? So I think this question I will direct to Keith first. Like, how is handling developer handoff different right now? Is it much more challenging?
I think for developers handoff, because previously, before COVID-19, we are using Figma, right? So everything was quite was already online. So I think on that front there isn't too much of an impact. Also, we also use Slack on the side, and if there are things that are not like missing in Figma, our engineers will just ping the designers directly and ask, and then we'll have a quick discussion. So I think the combination of using Slack and Figma has worked for us before COVID-19. So even with this circuit breaker, it doesn't affect us a lot. I think the developer handoff will still be quite smooth. It's just that I think when we are doing a QA, some of the designers left because I always encourage the designers to have two phones, right? One iOS and one Android.
Okay.
And then so the kind of when you're doing QA, you should always look at the final implementation, right? So we need to check Android, we need to check iOS. Then if you leave your other phones that kind of in the office, it's a bit harder for you to verify that, hey, the work is done kind of based on the specs. So some of the designers, what they do is then they get the engineers to do a screen recording, and then from there, then they will kind of look at it. Because we are the ones who fast over, this thing is it the correct font size, or this thing is 2 pixels off. We fast over those things, and we want to check that the implementation is done based on the specs. So I think for those of us who left our phones in the office, then now we just have to make do with getting engineers to help us check. So that's on the engineering handoff. I don't think there's a big impact. For the kind of brainstorming, like I mentioned, like that's something that is kind of bread and butter for design, right? We like to kind of bring people into a room, like convene a conversation, and get everyone to kind of participate in the design process. So that has been challenging for sure. So one thing we have been doing is to shift a lot of our brainstorming online. And so I guess when you brainstorm with designers, Figma is quite good. Like everyone just go in and kind of move boxes around. I can share what we have done.
Yeah, sure. Feel free to share.
So this is like just now I mentioned that we did a retro on how we think about working remotely, right? So like first we created a board like this, and then of course there are a lot of scribbles on the side because we are messy. We say like one word to describe how we feel, what we liked about working from home, what we have learned, what we lacked with this working from home arrangement, and what we long for. And then after that, we kind of do brainstormings around like what we can do to make our lives better. So this is using the design process on ourselves, right? So like dot voting now, it's just putting hearts on some of these ideas. And then so this one we took it from some template we found online, and then like a virtual high five at the end of it, right? To make things a bit fun. And as you can see, to be honest, like when we first started doing the brainstorming, everything was aligned like nicely like a grid. We have to force ourselves to make things a bit messy. And then so these things happen a bit more kind of fluid and organically, like people sketching, people just kind of writing during the brainstorming. So I think the idea of doing like online brainstorming, it's there's more preparation work for sure. Someone needs to prepare the board. Someone needs to be thinking about how we spend the time and the instructions that we'll give. So I think this is the first remote brainstorm that we did, and then we also asked ourselves, how can we do it better? Subsequently, when we also have brainstorming with other functions like engineers and whatnot, so they might not have the editor license to Figma. So what we what we did is to also do some of these things on Google Slides, so that they can also participate with our process. One thing I encourage my team to do is prior to setting up this remote brainstorming, right, send pre-reads, because I think getting people online and then trying to present something, it's you can't get as much across, and you'll spend a lot of time trying to bring people onto the same page. So you'll be more productive for us to spend the time together doing the brainstorming work itself, than going through like a 30-minute presentation about what the problem is, what are the how might we statements. So those things, if possible, we try to do it offline.
All right. So, for offline, you mentioned that you try to do it offline. What does it mean when you say you try to do it offline?
So we will write out the context of the problem, even some of the inspirations that we gather. Kind of just put everything into a Google Doc for everyone to read. And even whenever you send out a Google Doc like this, right, the people's natural tendency is to start commenting.
True.
And then they'll start building on the context, and that is when I think you will know that people get it. Like why are we inviting them to this brainstorming session? And I think then there's already some discussion going on, and then after that we move on to the brainstorming session online.
Okay, all right, okay, got it. So, Shaza, how is developer handoff different? Is it still the same as usual? Because I also know that your developer are mostly remote most of the time.
Yes, yeah. Well, developers don't really need the same sustenance as designers. I would, because I am a designer, so I have the license to say this. I think most designers actually is a little bit more fragile in terms of needing reviews, needing support from other designers. I myself sometimes suffer from that, but developers they're quite a beast at working remotely, to be honest. They're actually very happy if we just leave them alone.
Okay.
But actually they want, what I notice is they do want to be involved in the design process, even if it's not as active participant, but in order to offer consultation if needed. So similar to Keith, what has been done is, because we are right now in Figma, when we start a new project, we immediately add our developers into that project. So they understand the reason why the product is designed this way. They understand the technical limitations, and it opens up a forum if designer is not sure of whether this can be done, what's the technical constraint. You can immediately ask there. And the fact that this is all documented on Figma, I think that is very valuable, because when the design is finally ready, anybody else who is new to the project can just refer to this existing comments. So we've been big fans of Figma, obviously. For brainstorming, we don't use Figma, and this is what I told Chiseng today, Keith. The reason why we don't brainstorm on Figma is because a lot of us are designers, and then we start doing designer stuff instead of brainstorming. So it was too much of a slippery slope for us. So instead, we discovered that we actually need to introduce some constraint to the brainstorming. So instead of designing, we should just focus on understanding the problem, understanding the user, knowing the challenges. So we actually use Miro for that.
Okay. Right. Yeah, actually Miro is also good. I need to promote a little bit because I also use Miro. True. I think Miro is it's a tool that actually connects non-designers. I would actually say something like that, because sometimes if I present something, especially to my my CEO, it's like, can I just use Miro? Because Miro he can edit, yeah.
You know how things get crazy if you use Figma, and this really happened. So we wanted to do brainstorming in Figma, and then we ended up spending even, like creating a library for sticky note colors.
Oh, okay.
That's not healthy. So that actually, it would have taken more time to do that rather than the actual brainstorming. So we said, you know what, no. Let's move to a more restricting tool. And so that's why we do our brainstorming on Miro. we cannot control ourselves, Keith, unlike your team.
But since you mentioned that some designers has the potential to do designer stuff on Figma, but does it happen when your clients are inside the call as well? Do they actually question like are they doing what are they doing, something like that? Or it's just
No,
basically
no.
designer stuff? Every designer.
I guess it was we tried it internally and then it didn't work, and then after that
Okay,
we
okay, all right.
moved to Miro.
Okay, okay, that's good enough because I was actually expecting some clients. It's like, what are we doing?
know.
What are we changing?
Yeah.
All right, all right, all right. So I think that's all for how communication and also handling of for developer being discussed in terms of remote. So I would also like to actually focus on how our team or your design team itself actually faces their own problem personally, because sometimes when we transition from working physically to working remotely, there are some kind of pressure in terms of mentally as well, because they are not used to it this so permanently long period of lockdown period. So how do you as a manager, right, actually motivate your designers or actually spot their difficulty in terms of working remotely, and then how you actually help them to solve their problems, even like, oh, I don't think I can do this, blah blah. Maybe your designer itself is performing uh, worse than usual. How do you notice that, and also how are you solving that problem for your designers? So I would say direct this question to Keith first.
Okay. So I would say that actually, a lot of the needs that we have now, right, are the needs that we had before COVID-19. It's just that because everyone is working from home, our needs are amplified. It's an extreme situation, right? So all our needs are amplified at this point. So a team like ours definitely need a lot more coordination because we are split up in different product areas, right? So if you might be someone looking after buyer experience, another designer might be looking after seller experience. And because like let's say because like Carousel is a two-sided marketplace, sometimes you realize, hey, there's a pain point in the buyers, but the solution might not lie in the buyer journey. The solution actually most likely will lie in the seller journey, because if a buyer needs a certain piece of information, then you need a seller to provide that information, right? So that's why I think as a team, like the way we are divided, we need a lot of coordination. And then this coordination is even more important now that everyone is working from home. We meet like 3 times a week. Might sound very excessive, but then it's actually what is needed to actually keep us as a kind of like as a tight group. So we meet on Monday to just do like coordination. So it's a way for all the designers to set goals for the week. So this week I'm going to finish this like these tasks. So it's kind of like a stand up. It's a way for us to also identify like, hey, you're working on this, and maybe you need to talk to someone else. It's also a way for the designer to say, I'm going to do something on the web, and I need some components, and ask for help. Like who has done this already, or who has the files that I can just kind of grab and reuse. So or like who already has done research in this area, like so that I don't have to repeat finding those knowledge. So that the Monday meeting is for us to coordinate to help one another. And then as a manager, it's also for me to see, like who needs more help versus the rest. And then Wednesday and Friday, we also meet, but that one, it's more for craft. Where the designers will kind of say that, hey, it's all voluntary. Like they will say that I'm working on this, I need help, I need feedback. And then we will kind of focus on helping one another on the specific design task. So actually, because we meet so frequently, right? So there are a lot more touch points for me to just see, like who is kind of a bit quieter these days, who doesn't seem to be like meeting the goals that they set for themselves every week. Then we'll go in to help. But I think at the same time, we also have to acknowledge that different people are kind of taking to working from home like different. Like some are easy, some of them take it more easily. Some of them are definitely feeling the lack of motivation. I think this is a time for us to also demonstrate empathy for one another, right? So, and think about like how, yeah, just how to encourage people. Also, sometimes it's as simple as just telling themselves like, yeah, let's push this back for another week. I think it's okay. Like personally, I also feel like highs and lows in terms of my own motivation as well. Yeah, so I think just having the empathy and letting the designers know that like it's okay. We'll get through this together, lah.
So do you guys actually have like how's that non-work section online, like maybe draw something on Figma? Something like
Yeah,
that.
we did. So as part of the brainstorming, the retro that we
Yeah.
did for work from home, right? So we thought, hey, let's set up some social dates, social meetings. So we tried doing coffee, like everyone making coffee and then showing at the same time. We tried playing drawful, so it's like Pictionary. Yeah, some of the designers are really competitive and they can draw really well. And then we tried doing yoga. One of our researcher is actually a yoga teacher outside of work, so he did yoga with the rest of us. We also did a meetup with some friends over at Zendesk.
Okay.
So we just try different things. Then with Zendesk and it's more drawful sessions, more like Pictionary, right? And then Carousel, we like as a company, we also have like I think every Wednesday we had like HIIT sessions. So like there's some workout sessions for like people who wants to kind of keep active. I think next week onwards we are changing the HIIT exercises to yoga. And then we also have like some sort of like happy hours. Because I mean, Carousel is quite big now. So what the people's team do, it's they send out vouchers, like delivery vouchers. So we just order meal, we eat together, and we still have our town hall meetings once a month, and we try to eat together, lah.
Okay. That's something we can copy from if you guys are listening and have the opportunity. So how about you, Shaza? I also think that you mentioned you want to share some of your sprint workflow, right? So
Okay.
yeah.
But let me answer the question
Yeah,
about
sure.
how do you keep people motivated. And this is probably not really something that happens because of the lockdown. But in case if you are planning to transition to a fully remote or half remote setup in the future, then maybe this might be helpful to you. So I think if you want to keep your team and yourself motivated, so it's very important. This is very interesting when Chiseng mentioned how do you keep your team and yourself. And I think this is a very good question for managers, because a lot of managers, Keith is already smiling. Sometimes your job is to take care of other people, but actually you also need to care for yourself, and you need to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. Um, and I think there are two components here that you would need. Three. One is the right people. So we have covered that. But then you need the right tools and you need the right culture. And one of the most discouraging things for tech people like us is if we have to do something less efficiently because we don't have the right tools to do it. So I'm just gonna totally give a plug to Figma for this. If things take extra 1 hour every time a designer need to pull from abstract, then design it in Sketch, then merge again into abstract, upload to InVision, stitch before sending the link to client, this is actual money. Like for somebody who runs a design business, this is an actual cost. So when we considered the switch to Figma, we considered all this extra time spent and people feeling discouraged because they have to do 6 things I just listed in order to give a link to the client or to the product team. And what Figma did is it just totally blew that number off the water. It completely obliterate all 6, and there's just one thing you need to do. So to me, when that happens, suddenly we see productivity increase, we see engagement increase, developers also come in and start having conversations. It's such a powerful tool to actually do all this. Um, So yeah, so I'm hoping I never have to go back to sketch. I'm so sorry if there are any
Okay.
sketch.
I was a sketch organizer.
I know you're also a sketch organizer. Oh no. But since then we actually have brought Figma to Petronas, and we have seen engagement between business, design, and tech has just been mind blowing. Um, and then so that's tools. And then we also, what we have done since the MCO is we have also, pretty much live in Miro. If we're not in Figma, we're in Miro, or we're in
Mm.
tech. So just those three. Even when we're having Zoom call, we tend to start Miro and share Miro board to illustrate a path or a plan. And this is very, very helpful because designers are very visual people. So the moment they are able to see something visual, they can make decisions faster. Um, but so then there's also the for long-term solution, we also have to understand that a lot of designers are actually individual contributors. Um, Having said that, that means they have the maker's mindset. Sometimes they have to join meeting. Trust me, if you ask a designer whether he prefers designing or having a meeting, I think the answer would be very obvious. Makers, designers are makers, and makers actually love their deep time. And if you give them a busy day in which you ask them to switch a lot, and it wouldn't be very memorable day for them. They don't know whether they're just busy or they're productive. So what we did was actually Stampede developers, God bless them, they built an app for our internal use to help people visualize the day. I'm gonna show you how that looks like. And
Sure.
it actually, we did it because we trust that people, if you're a maker, you want every workday to be your best workday. That is how makers think. But sometimes you remember your workday, sometimes you don't remember. The good days are when you can have some deep time for you to get in the zone, right? So if you fill your day with the right things, you're gonna feel accomplished. If you fill your day with the wrong things, you're not gonna feel very good. So our developers actually did this for us. I'm gonna share my screen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
It's on
there
the
you go. Yep.
bottom. All right. Let me add to stream. All right.
Yeah. So this is how my day looked like several days ago. This is this
Mm-hmm.
is at the okay. So this is at the beginning of fasting month. So obviously I have to wake up very early to have my
Okay.
breakfast.
Okay.
And I was supposed to start work from 6 until 2 o'clock. But then
Mm.
because I already know this is that's it. That's my limit, right? But then I continue working from 3 to around 4, and then 4 to around 6:30. Very very. But you can see actually for the first like 7 hours, I actually get very very good time to do something that really matters to me as a designer.
Mm.
So our developers did this, and then this is how I see it. This is how I see my day. From 6 o'clock until around 11, I'm like the Millennium Falcon. I can do
Mm.
12 parsecs. Uh, 12 at noon, I start not thinking about food, but I start thinking about coffee. And because I'm fasting, I can't get any caffeine, additional caffeine. But by 2 o'clock, you can see there's a gap, and I'm already crawling. Like mentally, I'm already like, oh my god, I'm exhausted. By 4 and 5, this is mostly the time when I spend answering questions. I don't spend any creative work here. My creative work is the green, but I spend answering emails, answering questions. But I was actually already like out. So I remember my day better when I have this. So that's what our developers did. Uh,
Mm.
Thanks to them. Yeah.
So when
So
you
go ahead.
so when you mention like this uh, visualization, right? So
Yeah.
if before fasting, how is that different before fasting?
Okay, so before fasting, because of the movement control, I
Mm-hmm.
still try to wake up. Okay, it's even worse. To
Okay.
be honest, it's even worse because I wake up at 4:30 in the morning. Because I realized that 4:30 to around 9 o'clock is a very valuable stretch of time for me. It's because nobody else is around.
Mm.
So if you want to do your creative work, if you want to to make a big decision, you kind of need to make it when you have the mental space, and this time actually gives me that mental space. But usually, so it's those bands actually represents different tasks, and but most of the time I'm productive when I limit myself to only around 4 to 5 tasks a day. That's what I notice.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So the moment
Right.
I start switching a lot, that's it. Like my
Okay.
attention span will be really bad. Yeah.
So if before fasting, right? Let me give you an example. Before fasting, let's say because right now you can't take any caffeine. Let's say if it's before fasting, what happens when you take caffeine after? Does it boost back a
Uh,
bit or it doesn't?
uh, well, the caffeine can be in the form of coffee or tea. So
Mm-hmm.
the boost is just nice, but also you have to also remember, like by the time when I'm thinking about coffee,
Mm.
that's the time when my blood sugar is really low. So usually I would have lunch lah during that time, right? So then my
Okay.
blood sugar will be better. Yeah.
Ah, okay. So, but it's kind of like you won't be doing some of the heavy creative tasks already after that as well.
Yes. Yes. It's
Mm.
mostly managing stuff in the
Okay.
afternoon. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Got it. Got it. Right. We are moving to our actually the last question actually because we only have like 10
Mm.
less than 10 minutes. So of course the last question is always about advisors and also summary as well. So you as a leader, you all as a design leader, you have been forced to actually change your management style and stuff like that for MCO and also circuit breaker. So what have you learned so far, and also what are some of the advices that you would actually give for future design leaders or even managers themselves when they are moving towards remote managing their own remote design team or managing their own remote team? So I would actually give it to Shaza first.
Okay. I guess I have two things that I would be looking at for managing people remotely. Number one is obviously we are in the business of having high empathy. Um, but also at the same time, so we in professionally we're trained to have high empathy, because if we don't understand our user, then we cannot design very well for them. Having said that, currently we are in an unprecedented time. So there are so many uncertainties out there. There are so many unknowns, especially to people who have never thought they would work from home, but now they have to. What are the arrangements like? Do they even have a space to be productive? Are they worried that a family member is might be exposed to COVID-19? So there are a lot of unknowns outside of work. Then there's the unknown inside of work. Will I still have my job? Will I still get paid next month? Um, so people have lots of worries right now. So I think a very key factor or key advantage a design leader can have right now is actually to practice those empathy muscles that we usually practice for our users. We usually practice for our clients. So we need to be supportive of each other instead of judging the other end of the screen. Maybe we can default to wanting to understand instead. So we can be supportive to our designers, and designers can obviously be supportive to managers. And how we do it, I think, would be by flexing our design muscle, because
Mm-hmm.
so far we have been designing products, right? But what if we can actually design the experience of teams working remotely? What
Mm.
if this is not a bad thing, but what if this is a way for us to actually use all our knowledge designing products, and use that for designing experiences? Um, Sometimes we tend to think of, we're designing for our users, we're designing for products, but actually team experiences can also be designed. So the moment I start talking about team experiences can be designed, the first thing that you can do is actually run a user research on your own team. What if you have an interview session one to one as a manager, and you ask your team member, how do you work? Tell me how you prefer to work right now. during the COVID crisis? Do you prefer to work early in the morning? Do you prefer to work slightly later because maybe you're taking care of your kids, taking care of your parents? Um, and then ask questions like, what do you value in a team member when working remotely? Do you value if that team member answers to you within 1 hour, or are you okay if it takes a little bit longer? Then you can also ask, what discourages you? Do you feel discouraged if a meeting is unstructured? Do you feel discouraged if the meeting doesn't have an outcome? Because you just sit in front of your screen, you're doing one meeting after another, but you feel like you're not achieving anything. So these are the questions that you can ask to your team members to understand them better. Then you can also ask, what are your most productive hours? What is the best time for me to get fast response from you? um, do you prefer if it's email? Do you prefer if it's Slack? Where do you work from? Is it in your bedroom? Is it at the dining table? Because if we're gonna have a call with a client, obviously we want it to be an optimum environment so that we can hear that person clearly. And also you can ask, what are the pain points? Because this is user research, right? So now that you've done that research on your team, you can actually start prioritizing them into low-hanging fruits. Many experience upgrades actually don't need approval from an authority. You don't need to go to the CEO to say, hey, I'm planning to improve the experience of my team. Most of the time, the guy will be just like, why don't you do that already, right? So some of the things that you can consider doing, you can organize remote lunches like Keith. I think many teams actually do this. Our designer, Zoe, who is also a Brazilian jiu-jitsu enthusiast, actually wrangled us into joining her workout session, but because she made us do 20 burpees, we bail out. So that wasn't so healthy. Or you can have, if you are fortunate and you are hiring and you onboard new team member, give that person the best remote onboarding day ever, because that will completely help that person be activated faster to contribute to your team. Um, you can organize for people who want to volunteer to give classes for leveling up. So these are all things that don't require management approval, but so they are low hanging fruits, but they can greatly improve your team's experience working remotely.
So to those of you who is also managers watching this as well, yeah. So you guys know that you should be able to do some research before you're hiring, especially when you're hiring for remote roles right now and you're not familiar with how remote working works. So
Yes.
yeah. So how about Keith? What are the advices and also what are the takeaways from you after managing your own remote team?
I think like what Shaza has said, like I think we look at the bigger picture here. The fact I think if we still have our job, the first thing is we should just feel grateful, right? I think a lot of people are affected in so many different ways. And I think just being grateful of the situation we are in, it's a first step. And also I think it's a great opportunity. I think it's a great opportunity for us to also see like what we can make out of this situation. And personally, for me, definitely, I think I've slowed down and started thinking like why was I so busy before COVID-19? What were the kind of the fads in my routine that I can trim out? So I think that's on the personal level, like the kind of advice that I can give. I think as a team leader. I think here is trust is like of utmost importance during this time. Like trust your team to manage themselves. Like if you don't trust them, why do you even hire them in the first place? So I think I never had a point where I suspected, hey, some guy is not working, because I think everyone now has like different working hours. So trust your team to manage themselves. I think even if like productivity has dipped, it isn't the end of the world, right? Because maybe we are a bit slower in some aspects. It allows us to actually have a bit more time to experiment with our process. So like what Shaza is saying, like, hey, let's do a bit of research on our own process and like what can we be better. So like if we move at a slower pace, then use that opportunity to kind of introspect and think about what can we improve. And I think that will make us a stronger team after COVID-19. Like for example, I think now that we experimented with the asynchronous communication, we're a lot more comfortable. And I think that's something that we will definitely add on to how we work after COVID-19. Then I think as a designer, I would say don't waste a good crisis. We are designers, we are problem solvers. So many problems out there, we can help. I think some of the designers in Singapore, what I saw, because now a lot of people are using food delivery, right? And then we have contactless delivery. So some of the designers have designed like these things that you can print out, you can color it yourself, stick it at the door to just say thank you to the guy delivering your food. Such a small, it's a very small idea, but I think it can bring a smile to someone who is delivering the food to you. So I think so many problems out there we can actually help. So go out and help as many people as possible. Then recently, here in Singapore, I've just organized a hackathon to ask designers to submit ideas, what we can do to help. We received quite a lot of submissions for that initiative. We call it Design for Good. Just saying put our time to such meaningful use during this time. And then I think with all the free time that you have on your hand, working from home, staying at home, also take the time to pick up a new skill, be it kind of learning cooking. I'm trying to learn cooking. More. I think there's a lot of things that are free online these days. A lot of musicals, plays. Just spend the time, and it's a good time. It's actually it can be a good and creative time for us.
All right. So I think that marks the end of our discussion on managing remote design team. So before I end this, I would actually like everyone who is viewing this or any potential viewers as well in the future for feedback as well. I would say that this should be, if you have actually feedback for FUG KL, Figma KL, be sure to actually go into this link, bit.ly/Figma community. It's pretty straightforward. It's just a feedback form where you can suggest future events and also future talks that you would like to hear from FUG KL. So once again, I would actually like to thank our panelists, Keith from Carousel, thank you, and also Shaza from Stampede. Thank you for spending time with me and also FUG KL and also the other viewers on this Saturday morning to share about your experiences on managing your own remote design team. Once again, I think to those of you who is watching, don't watch in your mama or don't watch in outside as well. If you're watching outside, please get back home. And also, learn something new. So once again, thank you everyone, and also thank you to the panelists. I'm gonna shut that down and broadcast.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chising, and thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.